Welcome, everybody, to this webinar on the church development tool. We're really glad that you're here, that you've come to join us. Thank you. My name is Stephen Hance. I work for the Church of England in the Vision and Strategy Department. I'm joined on this call by Rachel Roberts, who works in the digital team, and also by Charlotte Sibtain, who works in data services. And we have Sherry and Kathy helping us behind the scenes, and Anna, grateful to you for our BSL interpretation. So we're going to be running through some of the basics around the church development tool, just helping you to see what it is, how you can use it. And we will make sure that there is time for questions at the end. If you would like to log a question for us to talk about, then please use the Q&A function, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. And you can drop a question in there at any point. And when we come to that part of our time together, I'll have a look at those and try to pick out the themes, the things that people are asking about, and we will do our best to answer them. So without further ado, I'm going to take a second to say a prayer, and then we will begin. Loving God, thank you for this time together. Thank you for your church, for the responsibilities that you've given to each of us to serve you within it. And we pray now for your blessing upon this time that we spend together, that you would use it for your glory. For we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So, some slides are going to appear on your screen. Sherry, if we can kick those off, that would be great. And on to the next slide, please. So let me just tell you a little bit about what we're aiming for with the church development tool. So our aims are threefold: that it should be simple, that it should be encouraging and effective, as a way of helping you to gain data, information, understanding of those things which you're doing in the life of your parish, your church, and how they're landing, the impact that they're making. Things like whether the demographics of those who come to your church match or are different from the demographics of the people who live in your community. Things like whether people feel that they're growing as disciples of Jesus, and if so, what church activities and so on are helping them to do that. And in that way, it can feed into things which you will already be doing, like mission action planning or other processes to help you to plan and to strategize for the life and the health of the church. Next slide, please. Sherry, channeling my inner Chris Whitty. And in this, our aim is to support what you're already doing. And I can't stress this too strongly. The church development tool does not exist to try to give everybody something else to do. The reverse is the case, actually. What we want to do is to give you a tool to help you assess what you're already doing, to support you in clear decision-making around that, and to invest in the things which are proving most fruitful. So in some cases, that might even mean doing less rather than doing more, as you realize that actually the things which are most impactful are these things, and then there are other things which may be taking up time and energy which are not so impactful. A quote from a satisfied user on the screen there, where a church in the Northwest found that the church development tool was just really helpful in refreshing the mission action plan going forward. So if we can just move on to the next slide. Here are some examples of the questions which the church development tool asks. So there are, for example, questions about evangelism and discipleship, including how participating in church activities support people in their evangelism and discipleship, and what's important to them in living out their faith in everyday life. There are also questions about interests and ministry activities that either people are already involved in doing or that they would like to be involved in doing. Then there are also questions about demographics, for example, asking people about their age group or their ethnic background. And that's material which can, of course, be compared with census data and other sources of local information to see how reflective the congregation is of the parish or the wider community. And then just the final bullet point there, that the responses will be interesting as a snapshot, but most important in tracking them over time. And with the use of the church development tool every 12, 18, 24 months, you will be able to see what progress is being made in the things which you are prioritizing in your local church. And we overall, as the Church of England together, will be able to see what progress we are making collectively towards the objectives of the vision and strategy that we have for the 2020s. So if we could move on to the next slide, please, Sherry, and you will see some examples of the questions. I'm going to show you a couple of screens with some of the things that we ask. So, for example, this section of the survey asks about people's daily faith. How often people attend church, how often they read their Bible, those kinds of things. And as you'll see, there's the kind of list of frequency options that you might expect across the top of the screen. Sherry, we can just move on, please. Then there are pages or sections which look more like this. Who is here? How regularly do you come? To what extent do you consider yourself to be a kind of regular church goer, and how long have people been coming to church? So again, just helping you to break down the levels of engagement, but how different groups, people who've been here for a long time, people who've been here for a shorter time, how they're feeling about their involvement in the life of the church and how the life of the church is supporting them in their own faith and discipleship. Next slide, please. Then there's two other surveys. Now, depending on the size of your computer screen, you may or may not be able to see that one, the detail of that one very well. But we have made available a survey both for 0 to 5s, and you can see that here, and then for the next age group up as well. So on the 0 to 5s, I mean, clearly we're not expecting 5-year-olds to tick their own ethnicity boxes, for example. That might be something that a parent or carer does. But we did want to find ways of capturing their insight. So there's a couple of boxes where somebody can say, what do you like, and somebody can draw a picture that's something to do with the church. And if we can go on to the next slide, please. And then this is our junior survey, and here we think it is reasonable to ask a little bit more. Now, I should say that we are still working on how this data can get captured within a church near you, which is the portal that we use for capturing and analysing the data. So at this stage, this will be additional data for you at the local level to look at and to read, to kind of flesh out the results from the adult survey, which we will be feeding back to you. and we'll be saying more about that in the next few minutes. And in fact, I'm going to hand over to Charlotte, who is going to take us through the next part of the next section of our slides. Charlotte, over to you.
Thank you, Stephen. Sherry, can we have the next slide? Thank you. So there's a number of ways that people can use the church development tool, and we've tried to sort of keep these as simple as possible, and also account for churches' different circumstances. So one of the ways church congregants can fill out the survey is online. So we can do, the church will provide a simple link which users can click on, and then that would take them straight away to the survey. The other way, as displayed here, is via a QR code. So this is a great way of getting your congregation involved if you want to print a poster or a flyer, and users can just click using their smartphone, and that will take them straight to the survey. There's also the paper version. We know that not all churches have internet capabilities, and it's not always easy to get online. So there is the paper version as well. So on a church near you, you can download that paper survey, and congregants can fill it out, and then they can hand it back. So there's 3 real simple ways for getting your churches involved in the church development tool. Next slide, please. So in terms of collecting responses, this is kind of entirely up to individual churches. We know, again, each church has a different set of services, different pattern of worship, different activities, a different way of engaging with their churches. So we really really encouraging churches to pick a time that works for you to be able to use the CDT. One thing we have sort of realized from previous sort of surveys and previous pilots of this work is that actually it tends to work better and you get a better response rate if you pick a short time period. So maybe a period of 1 to 3 weeks, as we recommended here, where you could really target and really focus in on the church development tool and get your congregation on board. Another tip for engaging your congregation is to perhaps dedicate some time after a service or a specific activity. So when you've got people there, they're already in church, they're already ready to go, you can just quickly ask them to do this at the end of your usual service. Next slide, please. So in terms of getting the results, if you have used the paper option, then those surveys will need to be manually input into the church development tool. Online responses are all stored automatically, so you don't have to do anything extra with those. And then the result chart, which you'll see in a moment, populates when you have 3 or more answers to a question. So this is to guard against anonymity and to help with privacy of respondents. So if I could have the next slide, please. So this is the report you can expect to see. This is a made-up fictitious one. But what you can see is that we've really tried to display the results as clearly as possible. We recognise that not everybody using the church development tool is going to come with a research data survey background. So we really wanted to make sure that the way this was displayed was easy for people to use. Stephen will go into much more detail about using your results in a little while, but this is what you can expect to see. Can I have the next slide, please? Again, another example of what some of the question responses will look like in that downloadable report. Again, we're just trying to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to pick up key bits of information and understand their results. Next slide, please. Again, another example. Who doesn't love a pie chart? It's a very clear way of displaying certain types of data. So again, we hope that this is a really easy to use way of understanding the results of your survey. Next slide. Now, what we have here again is the sort of an example of what you can see when you download your results. But in this particular graph, you'll see that there is the church development survey, and then there's also parish census data. So what we've tried to do is incorporate parish census data into certain key demographic questions. So where census data is available, for example, for age or ethnicity, we've incorporated those results so that users can really compare what is going on in your congregation versus what is going on in your parish. And we really hope that this gives churches an understanding and a nudge and encouragement to sort of think beyond their particular congregation into the wider parish for missional opportunities and anything extra that you could be doing to engage with people that aren't in your congregation but are in your parish. Next slide, please. So again, similarly with age, we've got census data for ethnicity as well. And next slide, please. So this, I believe I'm now handing over to Rachel, who's going to do a live demo of the church development tool so you can really see in real time what that looks like for users. We can just have the next slide.
Great. So bear with us just a moment while we switch over to me doing a screen share. I think I just need the slides to be unshared and I will then be able to share my screen. Great. So everything that we've been talking about is available on achurchnearyou.com. And you may already be an editor here, or you may not be, but either way, hopefully I can show you how you would find the church development tool and use it. So the first thing you need to do is go to editor login in the top right. And if you're already an editor, you would put, this is where you would put in your login details. If you're not yet an editor on A Church Near You, you can become one. To start that process, then where it says click here to register, go for that. There's also a little link to our help page there, so that you can become an editor. Basically, you need to create an account, tell us what church you'd like access to, and then the existing editors will be notified to approve you, or if there aren't any, then we'll centrally be notified to approve you and get you sorted out. So once you've got your your login details, then click login. And now it looks very similar to how it did before, except we've got new editor options along the top here. And if you're already an editor, you'll know that there's various ways to jump to your church and see all your edit options. So I'm going to use one of my favorites to show you today, which is simply to hover over churches and benefices in the top menu. And then click on the name of the church you're interested in, the church you want to run the church development tool with. So I'm going to use this demo church called All Saints Church. So I'm going to click on that. And what this is doing is it's opening up for me editor view for that church. So this is not what the public can see in this whole area. It's only approved editors for your church. You can see all the options. It's only approved editors for your church. You can set up the church development tool. So on the editor menu on the left-hand side, we've got lots of different options, but the one you need to go to for the church development tool is quite usefully the first one, where it says Marketplace. And we call it the Marketplace because this is where you can get lots of extras as an editor. In a sense, you can go shopping for anything you like that we've got available. It is a shopping place, I should say, where everything is free. You don't have to pay for your shopping. So let's go to the Marketplace, and you can see there's a choice of things here, but the one we're interested in today is the church development tool. So when you first come to this, it will look, as you can see now, with the toggle in the top right grayed out. If you'd like to start setting up the church development tool, just click on the toggle and you'll see this new button appears. It says View Survey and Responses. So click on that. And here you've got everything you need to run the church development tool. There's sections on this page. The first section is all about resources you'll need to collect responses. And then further down the page, which we'll come to in a minute, is where you get your results. And if you have used it in 2022 as well, you can see your results from previous years. But let me just show you this top section, collecting responses. So you've heard us mention the printable version of the survey. So that's the first thing here. You can click to download PDF of the survey, and there's a large print version. And there's a reminder, if you are using these print versions, to make sure you're protecting people's privacy. We're not collecting names, but if someone got hold of an individual person's copy, they might be able to identify the individual. So it just reminds you to make sure you're being sensible about that, maybe asking people to return their surveys in blank envelopes. And then, so if you want either of those, you just click to download and it will create your printable version. And then we've got the link to the online survey, so you can click on that. And you can see that opens up the questions in a way you can complete online. People can tap their answers, go through the whole thing, and then press finish survey when they're done. So if you want to circulate the link to the survey, then you need to click in the address bar and copy this link here. That is the link that you can now put in your email, for example, to send to the people you want to complete it, your church community. But also, if you have got responses on paper that you want to input, then again, just return to this link, fill in, transcribe out the answers and press submit. And you can do that as many times as you need to work through the paper forms. You can have additional people come on board as editors on a church near you if you want somebody to help you with that. And if we keep going down this page, you can see here there's more downloads. You can click to download those surveys for younger people that Stephen was talking about. You can click to get your poster or flyer with QR code. So just a reminder again that that's unique to you. So to get the right one that will link people to your survey link, you have to make sure you come here and click on to get yours. Again, that will just download for you. And you can print it from there, you can save it from there, whatever you'd like to do with it. And we've also, at the bottom of this section for helping you collect responses, we've got a few more downloads. There's a PowerPoint slide with some simple church development tool branding on it, a customizable graphic, so it's got big white space in the middle for you to write your own text. So if you'd like to use those to help do communications, asking people to complete the survey, then you can. It's completely up to you. Different churches have different ways of doing things, but yeah, these are blank for your own text. But we do also have a Word document with some suggested text that you can use in lots of different ways. So we want to try and save you time. You'll probably need to adapt the text for your church context, but it just hopefully can speed you up a bit by providing some text you could copy and paste again into a newsletter, into a flyer. There's even some suggested social media posts if you wanted to do that. So imagine you have collected your responses. How would you then see your results? Well, let's keep scrolling down to the Your Results section, and you click where it says See Your Results. And this is where it opens up the report that we were showing you samples from earlier in the webinar. And as you've seen, there's different formats for the responses, but when you're viewing it online, you can also hover over different sections of the charts to help you understand them and see what's being shown. So we've got the coloured key at the bottom telling you what each bar represents, but you can also hover over to get more information. So here it's telling me that it's actually 3 people who've said they attend worship in person daily. So you can explore and try that. And important to say as well that once you've opened up your results, you can also export them to save as a PDF or print them. And you can do this using your browser. So for example, here, I'm going to use my browser in the way I normally do to print something, and it will open up the report, and it should show you it formatted in a way that it fits nicely on the paper. If it doesn't, you might have it set to portrait. So if it comes out looking like this, then just make sure you switch it to landscape, and then you should have something that looks better to share. And I have the option to print to PDF, which I might want to do if I want to email it around to my PCC or something like that. But I could also print it out using the printers that I'm connected to. Also in the section Your Results, there's a Word document that summarizes some of the things we're going to go on to talk to you about now, which is advice on interpreting your results and advice on planning next steps. So you might find that useful. So that's how you can access all of this within a church near you. It's all in the marketplace under church development tools. So you can return here by clicking the marketplace at any time. Again, click view survey and responses and go back in and get whatever you need. But if you do have any questions about how this works in relation to a church near you and access to a church near you, please do put your questions in the chat, in the Q&A, I'm sorry, and I'll be happy to answer those at the end. So I'll hand back now.
Rachel, thank you. And Charlotte, that's been really, really helpful. Thank you. It's been great. If we can get the slides back, Sherry, that would be great. And I think I should be at slide 20 by now, I think. So I just want to pick up where Rachel left off and talk about, so how might you use, just one more slide, slide 20. How do you use what you've learned? That's the question, because it's very interesting to learn all sorts of things about our churches and our context and so on and so forth. But it's only really been worth the effort if there's something that you can do with it. Thank you. That's great. So as Rachel said, then there is a section that we've written. Which goes, which is you can see from a church near you, which has got some prompts. But I want to give just a few kind of highlights and comments, just to kind of get us started. Really, I won't cover everything that I wrote in that section, which you can read at your own leisure. So, in terms of how we might use the results, then, well, one thing is to say, it's likely that there are people in your diocese who may be able to help you just process and think through the results. And then I would say that the most crucial thing is to think about, where are we going to focus? You will learn a lot from doing the church development tool, and that could almost get a little bit overwhelming. So how will you decide that the one or two things that we're really going to focus our attention on are going to be these? For example, you might learn that the discipleship programs that you thought were really, really beneficial and people were really enjoying, well, maybe they don't seem to be landing perhaps in the way that you thought they were, or that they did some time ago. Or you may have highlighted to you the extent to which certain groups within the population of the parish are underrepresented in the worshipping community, and want to think about how to address that. So choosing a couple of things which you're going to do a little bit of deeper work on is really important, I think, to prioritize. And we do have some resources which will help you once you have done that. And I'm going to put into the chat just now a link to a website. This is from Evidence to Action. You may remember the report from some years ago on from Anecdote to Evidence, and then the follow-up report from Evidence to Action, which has helpful worksheets and thought prompts and inspiring stories to help us take what we learn when we study our own parish and our own context, and then to think about how to kind of move forward. So rather than reinventing that, we've decided to sort of repurpose that, and that's one of the things that you will read about on the link that Rachel was highlighting from a church near you, but I've put the link in the chat too. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So here's just some kind of examples. So one of the questions, I think Charlotte flagged it, there's a question that says, what age are you? If you were church A, you might look and say, oh, right, okay, well, we aren't that representative, are we, of our parish as a whole in terms of age spread. Here we are, majority of our congregation are over 60, whereas in the parish, the largest in group is people between the ages of 30 and 44. So what do we do about that? Of course, that's for you to work out, but you would have the data to, if you like, put that at the top of the priority list. Sherry, next slide, please. Here's another Church B, which has answered the same question. Again, they've got a majority of people in their 60s or above, but in their parish, the spread is a little different, but in the church, it's a little different as well. So again, how are we going to try to be more representative, to become younger and more diverse? And again, next slide, please. And Church C, as you can see, it's a different kind of spread. But the point remains the same. Understanding what the differences are, what the discrepancies are, and then having an intentional conversation together about how you want to respond to that, what you think it would be realistic, appropriate to try to do. So let's keep going. Sherry, next slide, please. Again, here's another question, another results sheet that you might see. Church A. Let's just take one of the questions here. Fourth line down, I feel a spiritual calling to the work I do in my workplace. And there's a proportion of people, nearly 20%, who presumably aren't going out to work, so they've ticked not applicable. And there's a good 30-odd% who said that they strongly agree with that, and another 30 or 40% who say that they do agree with it. So you might be happy about that, or you might think, well, it would be great to help those who disagree or who aren't sure to get to a place where they feel that sense of calling about what they do in their kind of Monday to Friday lives. Next slide, please. Just a different kind of spread from the same group of questions. And next slide, please. I think we'll see a different spread here. But you can see the way that this works, that you look at this and you think, oh, right, what am I learning? What are we learning? What might we want to pay more attention to do a deeper dive on? What might we begin to prioritize for action over the coming 12, 18, 24 months? Next slide, please. So here are just some sort of thought prompts, but they're no more than that. So perhaps the survey results reveal that people in your church have got a strong interest in engaging in wider community activities. And that could help you in your planning, because it might mean that you could consider offering more space to incorporate those activities into your church's mission work. Or the survey might show that not everybody agrees that with the statement, I know how my faith connects to everyday life with everyday life. Then you might want to think about how this could be talked about more, or consider following an everyday faith journey together from the Everyday Faith portal, which will be being launched quite soon. There's a question as well about whether respondents are involved in small groups. And you might see results here which say that people would like to be involved in helping or leading with small groups. And you could think about how you might draw those people in and support and mentor them. So you see some of the ways in which this could work. You would think of a dozen more of these, but these are just kind of examples to to show you the kind of thing that we're talking about. Next slide, please. So the results come to you and to your PCC, and then if you choose to, you can present the results back to the wider church and engage the whole congregation in planning for the future. Or you might decide that's a conversation for the PCC, or you might decide that you want to do a summary. It's entirely up to you. The only other people who will see the results will be the diocese, and that will help them because they will be interested to see how diocesan strategy and priorities is kind of rolling out across the churches of the diocese. Next slide, please. So this brings us to the end of the presentations. So thank you for your attention. Sherry, we can turn the slides off now, please. And this is the moment that we're going to look at the questions which have been coming in. So if you have got questions which you haven't placed in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen, can I encourage you to do so? And please don't put them in the chat. I will tell you I'm not looking at the chat. So if you have put a question in the chat, I'm not going to see it. But if you put it in the Q&A, I will, I promise. And if we can, we'll have a go at answering it. So there's a question here. Rachel, I think this is going to come to you. Is there any way we can develop our own custom questionnaire and access it through a church near you?
Hi, thanks for your question. Yeah, at the moment, it's just the questions that we've set up that work within the survey. It's something we could consider in the future, but at the moment, it's the set of questions that you can see.
And just while you're live and on the air, as it were, another question for you, Rachel. Letting the world have editor access to type in church development tool answers is not ideal, Sandy says. Is there a way that access could be restricted to protect the work of webmasters?
Yeah, I was glad to see this question because it allows me to clarify that the link to the survey, to complete it, you don't have to be an editor, and that's so that anyone in your congregation can complete it. But when I said that you have to be so actually, yes, you don't, you could, anyone could also input the paper results. If in order to explore all the functions that I showed you, you do have to be an editor. And if you're concerned about the amount of access that someone has when they're doing that, we do actually have some different levels of editor access. So I'm going to put a link in the chat where you can ask us more about that if you're worried about that. But we have to make it possible for anyone to reply to the form so that anyone can reply to the form, if you see what I mean. But if you're concerned about editor access, get in touch to find out more.
Great, thanks, Rachel. Charlotte, a couple of questions for you. Is the tool time limited, or is the plan for it to be always available?
So the tool is open at the moment, and it will be open for a period of the year. So I think we opened it in April and it's closing the end of November for this year. The idea being that by closing the tool for 1 or 2 months of the year, it gives us an opportunity to do any of the necessary development work behind the scenes. So if there's anything we want to add or change or modify slightly, then we just have to close the system to enable us to do that. But we recognize that churches work on very different timescales, very different priorities throughout the year. So we wanted to give churches as much time as possible to use the tool, which is why it's open for several months of the year.
Thank you. And also for you, I think, Charlotte, the parish census data, a couple of questions on that. Is this the most recent from the 2021 national census?
So the census information which is incorporated in the church development tool at the moment is not the most up to date. census information. So it's the 2011 rather than the 2021. The reason being that the Office for National Statistics release census information at different levels. And in order for us to do the work behind the scenes to make it parish applicable, we need to wait for the ONS to release that census data at the right level so we can work with it. It's my understanding that that will come out potentially in the autumn, which means that by next year, when the CDT opens, it will all be updated with the most current census data.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions about which I think really are about United Benefices and how this operates, how this can operate in a United Benefice. So one parish or benefice with 5 or 7 or 8 churches. Rachel, is this with you? Is this a church near you question?
So at the moment, there's one survey and report per church. So what you can do if you're in a multi-church benefice is you can kind of run it out of one church's a church near you profile, but share the link with people in all of your churches, and then you get them all added up. So that's a potential solution. However, there isn't a question in there that asks people to identify which of your churches they're coming from. So you wouldn't be able to separate out at the moment if the responses were different from different churches in your benefice. So again, that's something that we could develop in the future, but at the moment you can't run the survey at benefice level, but you can run it at church level and open up one church's survey to the whole benefice.
And so that's benefice level. There's a question as well about how the information can be accessed at a diocesan level. So if I'm a diocesan staff person, how will I gain access to give me a kind of diocese-wide view?
Yeah, what we're able to do for dioceses is at the end of the year to do an export of the results for the churches in their diocese.
Thank you. A couple of people have asked a very specific question, which I'm going to answer or try to, which is around when we ask about how regularly people attend church, one of the options is never. And so one or two people have said, well, what's the point of asking that, since they obviously attend church sometimes because they're there in order to complete the questionnaire. And I guess part of the answer to that question anyway is that somebody might be in church as an absolute one-off, friend's baby being baptized. So they in normal run of things they don't go to church at all, and but they may still fill in the form. Charlotte, is there anything else you want to say by way of explanation as to why we've included a never category?
No, I think you've covered it perfectly. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And so let me ask you something else. Is it possible to access the PDF version as a model for similar programs elsewhere in the Anglican Communion? I mean, presumably the answer is yes, isn't it?
Yes. I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
It says on the screen now that Kathy would like to answer the question. Kathy, do you want to answer the question verbally?
No, sorry, I was just marking questions answered when they'd been answered, so you didn't have so many.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So
okay.
sorry.
Okay. No, that's that. I should have realised that. I think the answer is that if there isn't any reason why somebody couldn't take the PDF and use this as the basis for something to run another province of the Church of England. Obviously, what they wouldn't then have would be access to the data processing work that a church near you does. So you would need some other way of managing the data and so on and so forth. But I think we wouldn't be. I don't think we'd be too protective about using the questions if you thought that it was going to be helpful to you. Let's have a look and see what else we've got. Specific question about young people aged 14 to 18. Do they complete the main survey, Charlotte?
Yeah, so they're more than welcome to complete the adult survey. I think what we were trying to do, and hopefully what we have done, is just give lots of options for individuals and children's parents and things to sort of decide which level of survey is appropriate for their child. Obviously, some 14-year-olds wouldn't be comfortable or able to answer the adult survey, whereas others would. So it's entirely up to individuals as to what they feel like their children and young people could answer.
Rachel, there's a question here. Setting it up for one of our 6 churches in our United Parish would surely skew the figures for the diocese.
You're right in that the export we provide to the diocese would say there's been a large number of responses from one church and not from the others in the benefice. So we probably do need to think about how we communicate that to the diocese as well, but they'd still be able to see the number of responses across their diocese and the overall picture of the trends in those responses as a whole.
And another one for you, Rachel, if I may, can you cross-reference answers so that, for example, you can see the relationship between the effectiveness of discipleship programs against how regularly people attend church? For example, you might expect that there'd be some divergence there. Would we be able to see that? So
the way that you get the report is in the diagrams that we've just shown you. The reason we haven't released the kind of the breakdown that would allow you to see that kind of thing is because we think that if you could see individual responses, you might be able to identify the individuals. So that's why you can't do that at the moment. But we are very much open to feedback about what you need in order for this to be a useful tool for you.
Thank you. And I do think that's an important point, that we regard this as being a kind of iterative process. And so whilst I would be amazed if come 2024 or 2025, there is something that looks totally different from this. Nevertheless, as Charlotte said earlier on, part of the reason for taking a break partway through the year is to allow us to say, okay, well, we've had quite a lot of feedback on this question set that says, oh, it'd be really helpful if we could do this, or, the structure of the questionnaire would be really helpful if we went that way rather than this way. And so to have a little bit of time to refresh, review on a kind of annual basis, hopefully we'll make sure that every time you run it, it's just that little bit more useful to you. There's a question here asking whether the survey can be sent to the wider community, not just those who are in the worshipping congregation. Charlotte, let me send that one to you.
Yeah, so the church development tool really was set up as a tool for churches to really understand their congregations and really understand who is in their worshipping community and who are the people attending their church. So I probably wouldn't, if I've understood the question correctly, I probably wouldn't recommend sending it to your wider community. I think unless you want that information, but the real point of the church development tool is to really get a greater understanding of the demographics and the discipleship journey of the people in your congregation and your worshipping community, and then once you have that, then you can explore sort of the wider parish through the census data that we provide as well, and then you can sort of compare the two that way. But it really is a tool for you to understand your congregation.
And somebody's asked when the survey has to be completed by. I think you might have touched on when we were closing this year. Can you just remind us?
Yeah, so the end of November the church development tool will close for survey entry. So you've still got a good few months to get involved, get your churches participating, and get people on board and using it. And then, yeah, it will close the end of November and look to reopen sort of early 2024.
Great, thank you. Rachel, there's a question about who in the diocese will have access to the to the data, and whether it's possible for people in the parishes, I suppose, to know who in the diocese has access. I don't know if we have an answer for that, do we?
Yeah, Charlotte has been liaising with the diocese. Feel free to you can contact us and we'll sort that out with what you need to know. I'm just trying to think what's the best email address. People want to be in touch further about that. I think you can, why don't you use the churchnearyou.com contact form that I've provided in the chat already, if you want to have a conversation with us about that. It's not a secret. I don't have it to hand at the moment.
Great. I think we're probably coming towards the end of our time together. So I want to thank the panel, Rachel and Charlotte and Anna, for expertly doing the interpretation work for us. We're so grateful to you, to Sherry and Kathy, who've been working behind the scenes, and of course to all of you who've come and spent some of your Tuesday afternoon with us. Do drop emails if there are things that we haven't been able to cover or things that you think of after the webinar is over. We really do hope and pray that this is the church development tool is a help and a blessing to you. We don't want it to be in any shape or form another kind of administrative exercise or a burden, but we want it to be a tool which really helps you in the local church. And if you have stories to tell as the year goes on of how that's been happening, we would love to hear about them. So we're going to come to the end of our time together, and I'm going to give us a moment or two for our own silent prayers, and then we will close by praying the words of the grace together. So let us pray. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Thank you very much for coming. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and God bless. Thanks again. Bye.